Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Brendan Hauser with EVOQ Bike. Yes, we got the new shirts out. The new print quality is ridiculous. Loving these. They're on the Grind City website. Maybe I'll put a link below. This is Bike Radio. If you're new to the channel, this is more of a potpourri of topics, things that have come up with athletes, things that people have emailed me about, topics that don't really, I think, deserve a podcast or a episode on YouTube all on their own. And that's why I usually don't post these on YouTube. And a couple people messaged me and said, hey, what's up with Bike Radio? Why isn't this on YouTube anymore? So I'm going to film these. If people like them and watch them, then I'll continue to post them. If not, I might just continue making it a podcast because it's much easier to produce a podcast than this video. So in this episode, there's 6 things that I want to talk about. Trainer fatigue right now. I want to talk about crits and body weight. I want to talk about anaerobic training and one thing that happened with an athlete, and well, we'll talk about that. First 5 races, if you're new to racing, maybe a preview to an upcoming full episode from Andy Coggan and just looking at the science of training and racing. And then talking about when volume is not a good thing. And people are thinking, Brendan is a huge fan of volume. When is this not a good thing? That's a really important one. So we'll save the best for last. Number 1, trainer fatigue. It is huge right now. When I was in upstate New York, this was the time of the year that I hated because you start to get teased by going outside and then you're forced back inside because it's snowing. It's whatever. I have a guy in Wisconsin. The race got canceled for snow. And it's snowing on Monday. It's like, what the hell is going on? But that's just the weather pattern for a lot of people. This is the time to buckle down. I know that even Josh has said I'm getting soft and that I'm sometimes not as regimented and like, you got to do this. I just don't think that's the best way to train. If there was ever a time of year when I would say, just shut up and ride, grit your teeth and do it, now's the time, because you're going to be racing in a month. You're going to be racing in 2 months. You're going to be going to Grand Fondas. You're going to be doing events with your friends. Now is the time to suck it up and get the riding done. It didn't matter if you skipped rides, as it matters, but it mattered less if you skipped a ride in November and tried to make up the time later. Soon there's not going to be time to make up because you're going to be racing and recovering. So grit your teeth, get the 90 to 120 minutes done during the week. It's not that far from nice weather and ride outside all the time weather. Just go get it done. So weight and crits. Yes, weight matters less in crits than if you're climbing hills, but body fat does not make you faster. I promise you that. And yes, there are athletes who are bigger guys or girls and they do well in crits. They would do better and they would be more dominant if they were in as best physical shape as possible. I really don't have much more to say beyond that, but I was just talking to an athlete and they said, it doesn't matter how big I am because I'm going to race a crit. I said, well, body, yeah, it does. Accelerating, you think, go put 5 pounds of anything on your bike with you and accelerate out of corners. You're slower. Or you have to put out more watts to go at the same speed. Do that over and over again. There's no arguing. Body fat does not make you faster. Anaerobic training. This is always an interesting topic because, yes, we've all been talking on this channel and it's out in the cycling world how more anaerobic power is not always a good thing. You're creating more lactate and you could essentially lower your FTP if you're just smashing and becoming more glycolytic. I had an athlete who was just feeling a little, I don't want to say unsharp's not a word, didn't feel as sharp as he needed to be on some attacks, and where he rides, it's quite hilly, so it was more on climbs. So I have before I really kind of learned more about the different ways that we're creating energy and how that affects how we train, you would always hear people say, oh, just, do a couple sessions of anaerobic training and that's all you need, you get faster. I think that is true for some athletes who respond quickly to training. Alan Cousins talks about different types of athletes, how they respond to training at different time frames. But that only happens if you naturally have some anaerobic capacity and naturally create power a little bit that way, which is sort of this athlete. So he wasn't feeling so strong on these climbs. We did 2 sessions and he was like back in the mix. And then in the next couple of weeks, he felt completely different than he did before. I do think this is very different, though, than an athlete who, if you're using WKO, has a naturally low FRC. If you're not good at surging and creating power that way, it's not going to be just 2 sessions and you magically are a faster athlete. I think we as coaches and people talking about training need to be careful with that. If you do start to shift your physiology that way, you have to keep that training up. And that's difficult because anaerobic training is really hard. If you are one of those athletes, I think you need to be doing that once every 7 to 10 days and managing it with the fatigue that comes with it. So anaerobic training, you got to do it if you don't feel like you're sharp enough when there's surges. And then the other last thing I'll say on this is make sure it's not something that could actually be addressed by raising your FTP. Sometimes I think people talk about surges late in the race, and that could be more attributed to all these little surges would hurt less if you had a higher FTP. It's not necessarily creating the power anaerobically. It's just that you're just not strong enough yet, and more aerobic training would be better. So that kind of muddies the waters, but training's not always straightforward. You got to kind of figure out which road you go down and find the best way. First 5 races, if you're new to racing, I had an athlete who made a comment that there were a bunch of crits that came up. He learned, obviously everybody learns a ton in the first 5 races. And he said, hey, I'm glad I got that first block of racing done. And the way he said it, though, I don't think he realized that he's just scratching the surface of learning things. While you learn a lot and you're drinking from the fire hose, you're going to learn a lot for the first 3 years, 4 years. If you're actually paying attention and focused on what's going on in the races and trying to get better and improve, and there's just so much to learn that's part of the fun of this. So embrace that, but just continue to have that learning mindset. I've been racing for a while. I'm still trying to learn new thing every time I go to the start line to get across the finish line. What I do well, what could I do better? And there's always faster, better people coming. So you got to keep your game sharp. That is for sure. I was reading this study on glycogen back from 2018, and a sentence stuck out to me when they're talking about the regulation of glycogenin, which I actually don't even know what that is. I can't forget from when I was reading this. But it said the regulation of glycogenin formation is not well understood yet, and they go on to talk about some different theories. It seems like a lot of times I read in forums that people will say, I found some success with these intervals, and someone's like, well, show me the study, show me the data, show me this. And I think that the science, it is really important. That's how this sport and endurance sports is progressing. But I listened to a podcast with Andy Coggan, and he was talking about why all this talk about zone 2 training. And he said the best thing is that the best information for us as athletes does not come out of the lab. It comes out of what are we doing on the road or the gravel or the mountain bike trails and bringing us success, aka wins. The best predictor of performance is performance itself, he says. So I'm going to do a podcast of sort of like a reactions podcast to everything that he goes through, because Andy Coggan is in the science. And so I think it's really important that we hear someone who is deep in the science saying, hey, all the stuff that we know in the lab, all the physiological stuff, it's really important, but we need to make sure that it actually works in the real world and that everything is not studied. And so we're even talking about studies about glycogen, one of the most basic things that we all use on a daily ride almost, and it's basic physiology, and they don't know every aspect of it. It wasn't that far ago or long ago that we were saying, 60 grams of carbs an hour. Oh wait, now it might be 90 grams of carbs an hour that we can absorb. Oh wait, it's 120. But people are adamant that there's a study for every type of interval, and this type of interval does not show this and this and this. Well, if it's working for a lot of people, shouldn't that be what's really important? So I think we need to be careful, and I just really pay, if you're going to take information from the internet, like information from someone like me, sometimes people post headlines to get the click, to get you to read something, and if you really look into it, we know you can't take data from untrained athletes and use it for an athlete like yourself who's already been training, and especially if you train a lot. And sometimes people post studies just because the headline looks good. But if you actually read the study, it might be from 7 athletes. It's like, that, you can't use that. Come on. So just be careful of what you're listening to, and definitely fact check me, and it's just really important. And then the last thing, when is volume not good? I have an athlete who's a very high level athlete and rides a lot. Things in life had gotten a little crazy, had made a comment to me. Actually, the text was, things are crazy, man. And I said, busy or crazy? You okay? And when talking through it a little bit, it's just things are taking a toll. And he had made a comment, I'm just feeling tired all of the time, all of a sudden. And so obviously that's a huge red flag. Need to take a step back. And he wanted to get back in a groove and do some big endurance rides. And I really, when someone's a high-level athlete, I like to give them some freedom. But I think this is the best time that I can step in as a coach and as a training buddy, as a friend, and just be like, listen, volume is great, but not when it's cratering you, not when you can't actually absorb the training that you're doing. If you're normally riding 16, 18 hours, and now you're feeling super stressed and you're scraping the bottom of the barrel to hit 14, you know what I would rather see you do? Do 11. Because you're going to be faster when you're not burning the candle at both ends. You need to be getting sleep. You need to be recovering. We could definitely alter sessions and just shorten things up, tighten things up, and say, hey, for the next 2-3 months, this is the time that you have to work with. You got to be nimble. And I know that I'm not always the best person to be saying this because people see the stuff I do on Strava and they're like, all you do is ride all the time. Yeah, when I went back to school to get my MBA, I was not riding all the time. I was going from work to trying to squeeze in rides to going to class and then doing group projects. And like everybody who's been to grad school knows all the wonderful things that you get to spend your time doing. But focus one day at a time. I think that's a good thing. But look at the week and just be realistic and set the target as very realistic. And then if you exceed it, great. You're going to feel amazing about that. But if you set this big target and you come short, 90% of the people watching this video, we're going to be disappointed about that. And then it's going to feel like a loss. And you're like, damn it, I only trained 13 hours. Do you know what our normie-ass friends are doing? They're not doing this, right? And sometimes life gets crazy, and that's okay. Think in the big, grand scheme of you as an endurance athlete. Don't let this shake you. This rattles people. This is when some people give up and leave the sport. It's like, it's not perfect. It's not as much as they want. Yeah, 2013, 2016, I was steady on the 8 to 10 hour weeks. It's just what it was. And control what you can control. So, anyways, Bike Radio, thanks for stopping by. Hopefully, if I'm going to post this as an audio podcast also, so if you are listening on Spotify or Apple, please leave a 5-star review. Please share, like, and if you're on YouTube, we hit 4,200 subscribers. Please subscribe. It helps us a ton. Half of you aren't subscribed for whatever reason. We're just bringing you cycling content that will hopefully make you faster. Good luck with everything. We'll talk to you soon. See ya.